Hey guys, what's up? It's Charlie here, and today we're going to be looking at the scariest things kids have ever said. So kids can obviously be very cute and innocent most of the time, but sometimes kids can be very terrifying and scary. Well, here are some plain eerie and creepy things that children have said to their parents. But before we get too scared, why not subscribe and press the notification bell too. Coming up first, we have Polish nursery rhyme. So this one very scary and kind of nice thing comes from a girl named Alison Scap. Alison said that one day her 3-year-old began singing a Polish nursery rhyme. You would think that hearing your son singing a nursery rhyme wouldn't be too scary. And it was also kind of nice, as it was her husband's grandmother who used to sing it to all of the babies in the family. But there's one creepy catch to this story. The grandmother who used to sing this Polish nursery rhyme actually passed away before her son was born. Not only that, they don't speak or sing Polish in the house. So how on earth did her 3-year-old son know of this nursery rhyme? Many people online said this actually happens with kids a lot. They said his grandmother could have been visiting him from beyond the grave. Many believe that when someone passes on, this doesn't mean they're completely gone. Instead, they're just in a different form of energy, and that's how they can communicate with the living. Do you think this is true or not? And if you don't, how do you explain this 3-year-old boy singing a nursery rhyme in Polish that he's never heard before? Next up is the blue house. This very creepy thing a kid said comes from someone online called Phonetics. He said when he was a kid, his younger brother would tell them about his other grandparents. Now, they didn't actually have any other grandparents, they just had the 2 sets that everyone has. But his younger brother would not stop going on about his other grandparents and the blue house they used to live in. Everyone always told him he was making it up until one day he told his mom that he could bring her there. So, out of curiosity, he went with his mom and younger brother for a drive. Astonishingly, his 5-year-old brother gave them turn-by-turn directions for 45 minutes. The directions ended around 5 towns away at the bottom of a dead-end street, and at the end of that street was an abandoned blue house. Now that is really crazy, and I'm not sure how the brother knew about this blue house. He always claimed his other grandparents used to live there, but because the house was abandoned when they showed up there, they had no way to find out who'd lived there before. Some say that because of the innocence of children, they make psychedelic messages possible. So are kids really natural conductors to the real world? I really think this sounds like the opening of a horror movie. And I hope when that kid gets older he can share even more information and find out who his other grandparents really are. Coming up next is Ultrasound Baby. This very creepy thing a kid said happened to a woman named Noonie Cat. Noonie had been working at a nursery school. One day she was watching a pre-K class while the teacher was out of the classroom. That was when one girl in the class walked up to her, pointed at her belly and said, "There's a tiny little baby in there." She then repeated, "There's a little baby in there." Now the creepy thing about this was, Noonie was actually pregnant. But she'd only found out one day before and she hadn't told her job. There was no way the kid could know from just looking, as she was only one day pregnant, meaning there was no physical signs. But maybe because she was a child, she picked up on some kind of baby vibes. Maybe it really does take a kid to know a kid. And this isn't actually too surprising, as there has been cases of kids who were able to guess genders of babies before they're ever born. And amazingly, these supernatural kids get it right every time. Coming up next is good night. I'm sure if you're a parent, you know that one big thing about having kids is saying good night. Whether it's reading to them at night, tucking them in, or just saying goodnight, it's a big part of a parent-kid relationship. But one night, a dad had a very creepy encounter with his kid while saying goodnight. His 2-year-old boy was getting ready for bed, so he said, "Goodbye, Dad." The dad then said, "No, we say goodnight." And that's when the 2-year-old said, "I know, but this time, it's goodbye." Now, I don't know how I could make this more creepy, and I can't believe this kid really said that to his own dad. Now, maybe the kid was thinking something else and he wasn't trying to be sinister. But I can't think of an explanation for this, and it really does sound creepy. Now, luckily the dad did survive the night to tell the tale and did see his son again. But just the fact that his kid said this does really irk me. Leave a comment telling me what you guys would say if your kid said this to you. Personally, I would be sleeping with one eye open that night. Next up is kids see ghosts. So this one comes from a user on Reddit named Phallicor. He said that he did have a very creepy experience with his kid. But it wasn't even what his kid said that was the creepiest part about it. One day he walked into his young daughter's room and said, "Why are you crying?" She then simply replied with the words, "Bad man." He replied saying, "What bad man?" She then pointed over to the dark corner of her room and said, "There." Then as soon as he turns to look at the corner, the lamp on her bookshelf falls to the floor. All of these events were incredibly creepy, and his daughter slept in his bed that night. Either this guy needs to call the Ghostbusters or move house. Now, maybe this was just a bunch of creepy events. His daughter could have been just imagining something, so she said bad man. And maybe the lamp just happened to fall off when he looked around. But some say there's no such thing as coincidences, and this could just be a very, very creepy ghost encounter. Next up is behind you. We've already covered how many believe that kids can come into contact with ghosts and the supernatural. Well, judging by the story of one Reddit user named Toasted Cheese, this is true. One night, he was telling his son to go back to sleep after he was complaining about something being underneath his bed. So he put his kid back in bed and said, "Go to sleep, there's nothing under your bed." And that's when his son replied saying, "He's behind you now." He says he still hasn't gotten over this and shivers whenever he thinks of the memory. Even though he didn't see anything behind him, maybe it really was something his son did see. You have to think, out of all the kids who say they see ghosts, are they all lying? Who knows, maybe some really do see something supernatural and very mysterious. Coming up next is Reincarnated Kid. Do you believe in reincarnation? Maybe you don't, but millions and millions of people around the world do. And they're not just people with theories, it's actually a key part of things like Hinduism. Well, some say that when people pass on, they're actually reincarnated as children again. That's why sometimes you get deja vu and children have memories of things they've never done before. Well, one woman named Darling Nikki said something similar to this happened with her daughter. When her daughter was around 5 years old, she said to her, "You're the best mommy I've ever had." She then replied saying, "I'm the only mommy you've ever had." Her daughter then looked back at her and said, "Nope, you're the third one, but I like you the best." Now that is seriously creepy, and I'm not sure what she meant by that. It would be more explainable if she said you're the second mommy. That's because maybe she thinks something like her grandmother is her first mother. But the fact she said you're my third mommy is really creepy, and it doesn't make any sense to me. Do you think this kid had already been reincarnated twice? Some say as kids get older they lose the ability to receive these signals, which is kinda sad. But do you think this is all a kid's imagination, or is it really reincarnation? I just hope this lady's husband hasn't been unloyal and this kid spilled the beans. And finally on the list of scary things kids have said, we have staring boy. This one happened to a woman named Cavalry. This actually didn't happen with her own child, but instead her half-brother. One day she was putting her half-brother down for a nap. That was when he said, "I can't sleep with that mean little boy staring at me." He then pointed to a dark closet in his room. Now, he doesn't have any siblings and there were no little boys in the house. At least as far as Cavalry was concerned. But because that creeped her out so much, they decided to go to the beach instead of take a nap that day. Personally, I would have done the same thing. I understand kids having an imagination, but I don't think they'd randomly say something creepy like that. It really does make you wonder, what are these kids thinking and how does this stuff get into their heads? Are they really seeing supernatural things like ghosts and other beings? Or are they just making it up for no good reason? Personally though, I'm glad Cavalry listened to her half-brother and got out of there. But leave me a comment below letting me know what you guys would have done in one of these situations. Would you have just brushed it off saying it was a kid's imagination? Or would you have actually taken it seriously and taken some action? Check out the poll in the top right corner and you can vote for the scariest thing a kid has said on this list. Personally, I think it's the kid who could recite the Polish nursery rhymes. That makes no sense to me. If you guys want some more amazing videos, check out my second channel. There'll be a link to that coming up on screen in a moment. But as always, thanks for watching. Check out some more videos on screen right now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.